He's going to be
Hi. Sorry about
giving our talk today, and which I'm so happy about. I'm always happy when Stephen's here. And then we're going to sit, and then we'll come back for discussion. But for right now, Stephen, take it away. Koshin,
Thank you.
Stephen G.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. Good to be here again, as always. I've been thinking a lot lately. It's just some meetings where some recovery meetings and some other community meetings where people have added meditation to the program. And I was at one this past Monday, Tuesday, excuse me, which inspired today's talk because the meditation was for 3 minutes. And then the next 15 minutes of the meeting was spent with a variety of people talking about how it was the longest 3 minutes of their life, the most difficult 3 minutes of their life. They couldn't sit still, their knees hurt, their neck hurt, their feet hurt. And I thought, wow, 3 minutes. And so when I had a chance to share, I talked to them about a 10-day silent retreat I had gone on, and they all looked at me like perhaps there was something desperately wrong with me. But it crossed my mind that, a lot of students that I've worked with in Buddhism, and myself included, really have this relationship to Zazen that is, I think we all love it. It's using that word in the big way, but a lot of people have difficulty. One student who would sit for Zazen with a big cup of coffee in hand. Somebody else sitting, what they described to me was Zazen in the tradition of Suzuki Roshi, and they turned on some background music, and I said, well, just like, we don't really need background music for Zazen. It's probably counterproductive in some ways. And they said, oh no, the sound of Aretha Franklin's voice really helped them to meditate. And I said, okay. So somebody's anyway, so for me, what I'm intrigued by is Buddhist practice, and Zazen particularly, according to Dogen Zenji, who our founder, has the capacity to be the gateway to peace and bliss. He said, to peace and bliss. And I know that when I came to Soto Zen, when I came to Buddhism, I was looking for that peace and bliss. For me, my life was bleak and complicated. I was a cocaine addict with an anxiety disorder. And I was angry and somewhat fear-based at the time. And so the idea of sitting with this anxious body or sitting with this anxious brain and mind was an idea that I wanted and I coveted when my Buddhist friends would tell me about it, but I couldn't even imagine what that could possibly be like. And then they told me that we sit Zazen to come face to face with who we are as individuals, the individual small self, and who we are as the universal self, all of us together, all of us walking the Buddhist path. And so I was really intrigued by that idea, this idea of to be face to face with the presence of this universal self. And nothing in my life up to that point really was operating that way. So I was really drawn to that, the invitation to connect and to have shared humanity and compassion. I heard about the Dogen Zenji's explanation that it was a gateway to joy and peace and bliss. And I was ready to enter the gateway, in my life at that point, as I started to write about it. And I came to Soto Zen 3 years before I got sober. And so, as I often say, if any of you were sitting with me those first 3 years, I offer you my apologies and amends. But what I was experiencing at that time was I was somebody that had both really big feelings and no feelings at all. Somebody who what they describe in recovery literature as a noisy good fellow, and yet profoundly isolated and quiet and shut down spiritually and emotionally. My job, I was working and had been working in a variety of places, increasing the safety net for those who had been left out of society and left out of healthcare and mental health particularly. And yet my own mental health was fraying around the edges. And so I came to Buddhist practice, introduced to it, and I sat down dutifully. And I in those days, on a zafu on the floor, with my legs and the best I could do to be in some sort of half lotus or lotus position. And I assumed this meditative pose. I focused on my breathing as they told me to do, breathing in, breathing out, counting, etc. And I followed the guidance and I waited for peace and ease to wash over me. Uh, instead, what I got in the beginning days was my mind racing around wildly. And it started racing around for some things as simple as, I don't know how to do this. These instructions are no good. These people are trying to make a fool out of me. And then as I got a little more mellow, it's like, I wonder if I'm doing it as well as the person to my left or the person to my right. They seem to be breathing differently than me. Maybe I'm just no good at this. Maybe I should go back to the religion of my childhood, which had not been good to me and I'd been away from for decades. All sorts of and mostly what it was I needed more instruction. And so I met with a teacher and I went to every workshop. I was a buffet Buddhist for a while. I went to every workshop that money could buy all around the place. And by that time I had just moved to San Francisco, so there were lots of workshops. Got a head full of book learning. In fact, my teacher for 18 years, Michael Winger, at one point said my assignment was to, for 1 year, not to read any books about Buddhism, meditations, read no books, just go do it. And so I sat down again, I smiled serenely, and I waited for my peace and bliss to come. And what I got was, I wonder if I paid my state income taxes yet. And I wonder if I've purchased the ticket to the flight that I'm going on in July. And I wonder if I did purchase it, what on earth I've done with it, where will I find it? And so what came to me was like, what's stopping me? I really knew by that point that I was making decisions. I had read a little bit about the Bodhisattva path, that I was trying to make decisions, not just for me, but for us. I was trying to live in a way that would be a model for folks about what Buddhism could invite us to do, the kind of peace and bliss and ease that we would get from being interconnected and being of service. And yet every time I sat down, I had all this stuff going on. And by this time I was in recovery for some number of years at that point. And I knew there that in Buddhism, as in recovery, that we are teachers 24/7. That, when you sit at a recovery meeting and say, I'm Stephen, and I'm an alcoholic and an addict, and I've been clean and sober for 5 years, people look at you when you subsequently walk out the door of that meeting, go to Starbucks and get in a huge argument with the person behind the counter because they're too slow and disrespectful. And, there I am being a person, that trying to have recovery and trying to be a good bodhisattva. And my mind was still in a whirl, still a lot of stuff going on. So what was stopping me? And the good news is I did have several teachers. I studied, as I know did Laura, at Plum Village. I was there for a couple of weeks, and the way they do it there, you actually study with a teacher, and at the end of that period of time, you take the precepts. And so my first experience taking the precepts was with Thich Nhat Hanh at Plum Village, which was pretty amazing. And the teachings, though, were what was really amazing. What he taught us was that it wasn't just me that was having these difficulties with Zazen, that most humans who attempted meditation, most humans are trying to live a life of serenity and peace and live according to the Bodhisattva vows and to be of service to one another. Most people are similarly vexed by this failure to access this beautiful invitation that we're given to just sit down and be quiet, just sit down and be still. And so the gift for me in those early days when I was studying, and then studying with Michael Winger at San Francisco Zen Center for a number of years, is that I found out it wasn't just me. There wasn't something wrong with me. That again, as Buddhism began to play a role in my life, and I got to play a role in Buddhism's life, what I found out was that there were these things called the 5 hindrances. And that these are some of the common ways that we're blocked from this gift of sitting, of samatha, finding the state of being in calm abiding, which can lead to samadhi, which is the state of being in deeper concentration, which leads to our capacity for insight, to really arouse mindful awareness in other aspects of our life. But what I found out was that all of us share these experiences. And it was such a gift to me to know that if I stopped trying to be the perfect Buddhist, sitting in the perfect posture, hurting my back and my knees, and trying to breathe like the people on either side of me, if I just instead said, this doesn't seem to be working for me today, what can I do? That not just Michael and other teachers that I encountered along my way, but everybody, you know, we all know the story, we say it here frequently, that when Ananda said to the Buddha, I've got this figured out. There's the teachings and the zazen and there's this and that and other thing, but I think, Lord Buddha, that having good spiritual friends is half the spiritual life. And as we all know, the Buddha said, no, Ananda, good spiritual friends, Kalyanamita, is all of the spiritual life. And so we get this opportunity to say, what's going on? What's going on with me? And how can I do that? How can I find my way to this practice and go to calm abiding, to samatha, so that I can begin to get calm enough to get into this practice in ways that would be beneficial to me and to all of those folks around me. And so what I was invited to do, and what we're all invited to do every time we sit, is to stop trying to be perfect and to acknowledge that probably most of us have had these experiences with these things. When we think about the hindrances and we think about the invitation of Zazen to truly get to know ourselves, and then to truly love the person that we get to know, to be connected with each other in that same sort of knowledge and love, and then to be of service with each other, to help each other and to teach each other. And it just makes so much sense, and it's so wonderful. And we have this opportunity. And then what we get to do is think about, well, what are those hindrances? What are the things that are keeping us, and the hindrances that are keeping us from actually sitting zazen in the way that we would like to? And the 5 hindrances, for those who haven't read them recently or don't remember, first one is sensual desire, anything that the body mind is conjuring up that we need or want, mostly want. Second one is ill will or aversion. So in the first one, it's things that we want, and the second one, it's things that we don't want. Two sides of the same coin. The third, sloth and torpor, which is sort of laziness or lack of motivation, lack of drive. Fourth one is restlessness or anxiety. And then the fifth one is skeptical doubt or indecision. And it often also gets translated, which is the one that I've been working on lately, and we'll talk a little bit about tonight, it's translated as lack of confidence and lack of confidence. And so how do these exhibit themselves to us? Well, I think they exhibit themselves when we first sit down to meditate, and we notice that there's noise in the room. And we notice that the noise is getting louder, or it's, you're wondering, how can I meditate with that person next door using their weed whacker? And why then do they use their weed whacker every week at 4 o'clock when we're trying to meditate? And I've talked to that person, and I've tried to be reasonable with them and ask them if all of that's going on while you're sitting in meditation. Or a waft of the spaghetti sauce from the neighbor upstairs in the next apartment wafts down while you're sitting meditation in a Zoom meeting, and you're deep in your concentration, and you're sitting in the proper posture, and you're breathing, and all of a sudden you smell garlic and tomatoes and whatever else you smell. And the next thing you know, you're wondering how quickly you can get to the grocery store after the meeting to buy some of those things to make your own dinner. And off you go. And all sorts of things come up. Well, what the situation is with the hindrances is they're not things we should look at to say to ourselves, this is another thing I can't do, or I'm not doing it well enough, or why am I still being hindered after 3 weeks or 10 years or however long one has been meditating. There are opportunities and invitations actually to say, what's actually going on, right? So it was suggested to me in the early days that I keep a hindrances journal. And so when hindrances come up during the meeting, my body hurts, my knees hurt, my feet hurt. People at San Francisco Zen Center, when I first got there, there was a teacher there who would routinely say, if you're feeling pain in your back or your knees, just try and sit still, not adjust. don't do any damage to yourself, but try and sit still first. And then they would say the sentence that some of you have heard, just breathe through your knees, breathe through your knee. And in the early days, I thought, okay, so you're telling me to breathe through my knees. I'm having trouble breathing through my nose and my respiratory system. And now you're telling me to breathe through my knees. And by the time that thought was finished, it was indeed a hindrance. It was a hindrance of at first, my aversion to being able to sit still, and then it was ill will towards the person that was trying to be helpful. That's what the person was trying to do. So what I was taught was just to notice that it's happening, to not, this is not the time for examination, not the time for reflection and clarification, any of that. Just notice that it's happened and let it go. And then something else may come up. A few minutes later, your mind generates some thoughts about, what's on Netflix tonight, and notice that and let it go. And then what I was suggested was that keep a little journal. So when the meditation period was over, like at 5:05 tonight or whatever, just have a journal somewhere, a device that you're taking notes on, and just notice what keeps coming up. And then that's a time when you could do a little reflection. You could say, why is it that I got so tied up in somebody telling me to breathe through the pain, wherever that pain was? And then I could look back to say my own experience in religious organizations as a kid and an adolescent was that they weren't healthy places for me, and that there was a lot of scolding, unhelpful behavior, and that I've cataloged that away. And so now when somebody gives me a piece at that point, this was a while back, fortunately, it's when someone gives me a piece of advice, there's that reaction to all of that old stuff comes trickling up. And so now I'm not just trying to sit for 20 minutes, but I'm trying to sit for 20 minutes in the company of the 25 of us. So, we're all sitting together, generating peace and ease and bliss. And my mind is back dealing with Father Postula, that actually was his name, and the things he did to the families and people that he was in charge of. And so that's going on. The other thing is we sit and we're trying to meditate, and we really believe that meditation can help us to be calm, help us to be centered, even in the Mishigas world that we're living in right now, can help us to have some sense of calm abiding. Right now for this hour, we're safe. The 25 of us here are safe. And that's a beautiful, good thing. And then we start, I wish I'd have brought my coffee with me to the front of this computer, or I wish I could have dinner later, or I wonder if Cynthia's going to bring me another cherry pie when I see her, or whatever it is. And the spin is on. And then if you're like me, the spin is on. I wonder if I'll get a cherry pie. I know I shouldn't eat cherry pie anyway. It's not healthy for somebody my age, but it's so delicious. And the deal is, I don't have to notice it. I just notice that I have a mantra that I learned and that I share with people. Many of you have heard it before. My mantra, when any of that comes up, is I take a deep breath and say 2 words, not now. And another teacher of mine recently said that their mantra is just breathe, which is even more to the point. But it's just a way of saying, like if you're training a puppy and the puppy's scampering around, you don't get mad at the puppy and pick it up and spank it and put it back on the newspapers. You ever so gently say, here, Bodhi, be here. And so that's a way of saying to this mind of mine, or my supposedly aching knees, or my itchy back, or whatever it is, it's just a way of saying, here, Stephen, right here. Just be right here, right now, in this situation. And, I would like to say that when I sit, for 30 minutes or 20 minutes or long retreat periods, that what happens is I suddenly am magically whisked away by those 2 words, not now. But it works for a while, and sometimes for the rest of the session, sometimes for a little while, sometimes it needs to be said over and over. But what I've learned to do is not be judgmental, not be harsh, not be my own worst critic, not use all that negative self-talk that family and parents and Catholic schools taught me. All that can go aside, and it's a matter of saying, how do I sit in this beautiful Zazen practice? And those are hindrances, and they happen to all of us. And so the last one that I mentioned is the one that's about skeptical doubt or confidence. And that, Franzio has a wonderful book called Unhindered. Um, and it looks like this. It's called Unhindered, and it looks at the hindrances. And one of the things he says is that it's really just time to let go. It's really time to sit in zazen and to let go and to realize two things. One is that everybody is being equally vexed, if you will, or challenged. And he encourages us to turn that into an invitation to really take a look at what's going on with me. What's going on and why is that happening? And then he also encourages us to remember that they impact our zazen practice, but they also impact our whole lives, right? They also impact our whole lives, that being distracted and having ill will and so forth. Tuesday this week is tax day. And I'm guessing, don't have to raise your hand, but just by a smile, I'm guessing there are folks here that did not do their taxes in as orderly and timely a fashion as they plan to do for this year. They may already be turned in. I hope so for you. They may not. But I'm also guessing that there are among us a number of folks who said, this is going to be the year. The minute I turn these in, I'm going to get a file and a box and an accountant or a bookkeeper or whatever, and this has never happened to me again. I'm going to start over and have everything all organized for tax season. And lo and behold, for me, that was 3 weeks ago. And I did, in fact, say, I've got a plan. I'm going to go buy one of those Intuit TurboTax things and practice on it all until next year. It's 3 weeks. There's no TurboTax in this apartment. But I did think about it. So the good news is that in life, as in our meditation practice, everybody encounters these meditations. And what Gil and other teachers encourage us to do is to really use our metta practice, our kindness practices towards ourselves and others, and not to get frustrated. To say, I've been meditating for X number of years and I should be able to do it better than this. We all have days when we're tired or distracted or overwrought with things at work or in family or the world, for sure. And if we find ourselves twitching, if we find ourselves looking out the windows and wondering when is the good time to paint this room again, because I'm now staring up instead of down, we just get this wonderful opportunity not to say, I'm no good at this, I'm stupid, I'm whatever. So we get this opportunity to do that. So Suzuki Roshi said, Zazen was our most important practice, to sit and achieve that concentration, to arouse mindful awareness, take an informed, wise, compassionate actions after that. You sit Zazen, he said in one of his talks, and then take the mind of Zazen out into the world. So I think that's the invitation that we have, is really, rather than chastising ourselves or anybody else who we notice in meditation, if those of us who are leading a meditation or a retreat or a one-day sitting, and you notice some folks are just unable to sit still or twitching or whatever, that it's an invitation first for me to say to Steve or Cynthia or Kirk or Laura or anybody who's here, just to say, I'm having trouble getting distracted by this thing, or I lately have been experiencing a really stiff shoulder every time I try to meditate. What's going on? And just listen to people's experience, because that's how we really learn it. The teacher who I've talked about here before, Norma Kawalako Wong, in her book, When No Thing Goes Right, says that when we find ourselves at these times, it's really an appropriate time to take the leap. So that no confidence thing that comes in as that fifth hindrance, that I can't do this, I don't know how to do this, I've been practicing for a long time and it's not always working perfectly. She says, just take the leap. Faith, she says, is what we have when we believe in ourselves and what we are about, the tangibility of our horizon story, not the probability of it. So the tangibility of that horizon story, what we can do if we decide to face the hindrances that come up for us in meditation and in life, and we decide that if we practice with them, if we use them as an invitation to say, why is my mind filled with ill will this week or this month or this minute? Why am I feeling a little bit tired or restless? I was doing a meditation workshop for a group the other day, and I noticed that I was feeling really tired and restless, and I was thinking about talking to you folks today. And I realized, as those of you who are friends of mine know, I have a terrible time with sleep and sleep hygiene. I had slept 3 hours the night before. And so here I was ready to, lash myself for not being a good meditator, and how dare I sit up in front of this Zoom screen. It was that day as well, and talked to people about how to sit zazen when I was just, and it's like that. The hindrance was that I was recognizing that I was tired, and that was real, and that was an actual body issue and a mind issue, and I could just, instead of pretending, I could just talk to folks about it and say what it was. Um, and then I could have the confidence to say, that's not about me being a bad meditator in any stretch of the imagination. What that's about the possibility that it could be done differently. Um, and so that's the invitation for today is to recognize that Zazen is a beautiful gift that we've been given, that we give each other. That it would be an even more beautiful gift if the minute somebody rang a bell, we immediately assumed a state of deep concentration of samadhi. That would be fabulous. And maybe for some of you that happens, and please share with us how you do that. And I think for all of us, it happens at some points in our meditation, in our zazen, or we wouldn't keep doing it. And so the thing is then to say, the confidence. When I got to recovery, they said, don't leave before the miracle, stick around. You got to have faith that things will happen. And that because of my religious upbringing didn't work very well for me. But what does work is evidence, right? And so the Kalyana piece, when I'm faced with a hindrance or a challenge to my meditation practice, it's simple for me to watch what the rest of you are doing, to talk to you about it, to be really honest that, today I just wasn't feeling it. Today my brain was spinning, or my heart was beating fast, or I wanted coffee, or whatever the thing was. And just to share honestly with folks that Zazen is important, and I want to do it, and I do it. And then there we go. So I think I'll leave it at that, and we'll actually sit Zazen now. Cynthia will, or somebody will lead us, and after that, you can tell me and everybody else how it is that you've perfected your